What up? What up? What up? Welcome into another edition of Green with Envy. Basketball is officially back. Preseason game number 1 is in the books. This is your boy Will Weir checking in. How you doing? How you living? Joining me today to hit the first morning box score of the year and recap preseason game number 1. It is my best friend, co-host, and the coach of our podcast, the one and only Greg Manakis. How you doing, man?
I'm feeling great, man. I almost put money on this game tonight. I almost bet the preseason, and then I was like, I'm not going to do it because I don't know what's going to happen at the end of the game. And it turns out Payton Pritchard put his superhero cape on and took us home to the promised land. So I should have bet, but that's the sign of a good bet, right? Is that you didn't make it.
Well, listen, we got a lot that we're gonna get into here, but just one preseason game. You and I were debating. We could probably do an hour on this. We're not gonna do an hour on this. It's preseason game number 1. We got to pace ourselves here in the second half of this podcast. For those of you that are listening on the audio format, we do have a great sit down with Amina Smith where we cover a whole wide range of topics from, unfortunately, the Patriots, ranging to behind the scenes with media days, the Celtics gala from this past week. Really great interview as always with Amina Smith. So that's coming up on the second half. And if you're watching this on YouTube, just scroll up. It's going to be there. If it's not, it will be there soon. But go ahead, scroll on up. We'll have that for you. But Greg, before we jump into this game, there's one thing I got to check in with you on. But before we hit the first morning box score, where I got to dust off the cobwebs myself. This is my own little training camp preseason that I got to get into here.
No doubt.
But the first thing I got to know: are your pants on correctly?
I'm not even wearing pants.
you took that out of the equation altogether.
Oh man, that was so funny. That's such a Jalen thing to do too.
300 mil, my guy can't put his pants on right.
Unbelievable. Jaylen Brown shows up to the game with his pants on backwards. I don't know if everybody missed that, caught that, but that's what happened tonight. Jaylen Brown played basketball with his pants on backwards. That's like every day for me though, bro. Like it's 50-50 whether my boxers are on correctly.
See, that's your boxers though. Boxers potentially, especially if it's like the athletic ones that don't have like the fly in the front. You know what I mean? Like that's more reasonable. The pants when you go on national TV with a $300 million man, that's a different story. But hey, you know what? It kind of humanizes a $300 million man. He's human, just like us. Greg, we're all just people at the end of the day.
We're all just people. We're all just people doing people things.
All right. Well, let's fire it up here. We are amped. Basketball is back in our lives. So let's do what we do. In case you're new to the program, it is time for the Green with Envy morning box score. Today's box score: the Boston Celtics take down the Philadelphia 76ers 114-106. Typically, we start with the bad guys, and we're going to do that anyways. We're going to still hit them here. Tyrese Maxey, impressive performance tonight. He had 24 points, 9 of 17 from the field. Patrick Beverley, 12 points, 13 points for Tobias Harris, 14 points for Jaden Springer, who I actually thought was pretty impressive for the Sixers as well. But let's swing it on over to the team that we are all here to talk about. And of course, we've got to start with MVP candidate Payton Pritchard, 9 of 14 off the bench, fresh off of signing a 4-year, $30 million extension. Get your bread, my guy. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. 6 of 11 from 3 for him, 26 points on the night. Go ahead and look at some of the Celtic starters here. Jason Tatum, 13 points, 7 and 9 from the field, double-double, 13 points and 10 rebounds. Newcomer Kristaps Porzingis, 17 points, 5 rebounds and a block, 5 of 8 from the free throw line, 2 of 3 from downtown. Jaylen Brown, 19 points on 7 of 10 shooting. And then for Jrue Holiday, only 2 of 10 from the field, had 6 points in his debut, 5 rebounds. Actually came off the bench to start this game. We'll see what that means for the future. But Greg, you know, stats aside, it's the first preseason game of the year. None of that necessarily matters too much. But I want to start here because I think at this point, there's no reason to get negative. Let's just keep it with the positives. Give me a positive that just jumped out to you here in this first game.
Kristaps Porzingis. Oh my God, Kristaps Porzingis, man, he looks so comfortable out there. There were a couple times where he seemed to not really know where guys like to be on the court. People coming off of screens and so on and so forth.
Some of those DHOs with Jaylen Brown, you could feel it was: do I give it up? Do I give it back? Am I rolling my? There was definitely some
that delay action.
Gonna happen. Yeah.
right? That delay action that Rob was so good at, that Al's so good at, right there at the top of the key, where you throw the ball into the big man at the 3-point line and run some action off of that. You can go double drag off of that, all that stuff the Celtics like to do. But Porzingis was great, man. Hitting that first 3-point shot. When we think about the Celtics and Al Horford specifically, right, in the playoffs last year, he really struggled to shoot the ball. Al, we know that he has good percentages shooting the ball, but he's not a shooter, right? Kristaps Porzingis can stroke that thing, and he was stroking it from deep. He took people into the mid range. He hit that the little jab step, one dribble to his left, sending somebody taking ankles and then dunking
Yeah.
on heads. He had the Rob Williams like lob at the rim, and he landed like a superhero. That's one of those things with KP that I definitely am going to be and I know we said positive, but I'm going to be a little nervous throughout this year watching Kristaps Porzingis land every time he jumps.
Listen, that comes with the territory. Replace the Rob watch with the KP watch. It is what it is, but you get so much more with KP, as we saw. And let's, just specifically sticking on that offensive end, you and I were texting a bit at halftime. The versatility that jumped out to me with when Kristaps Porzingis is involved in that offense, and you even mentioned to me that there's going to be times where we might just have to run through the offense through him because he's going to be, so difficult to stop, whether it's spacing the floor, whether it is being that Rob replacement with that vertical spacing, as you saw in that electric dunk, in that first half. But there's going to be so many ways that Kristaps can beat you that I really think his efficiency stats by the end of the year have a chance to be really, really special, because all of those, examples that you gave of how he got buckets, how he affected, the Celtics offense, they were easy. They were good looks. They were in high percentage situations. And I think that's going to be a pretty big consistent for Kristaps Porzingis. So I thought, especially him on the offensive end, and then even on the defensive end, you could see his rim protection was very legit. There was a sequence in the first half. Tobias Harris is going down the right side of the lane. You see when the Celtics did have the double bigs, so they started the double bigs, as I mentioned in that, in the beginning of the box score here. Him and Al basically both swatted Tobias Harris off. And that was really cool to see that length. And then you have Jason Tatum, who had a double-double coming in, off of the weak side. So I do think that there's going to be, obviously some growing pains, which Tyrese Maxey was able to expose some of that drop coverage at times, where Tyrese Maxey just had a really, he had a really impressive night tonight. And that's, if you're Sixers fans, that's the silver lining of, hey, listen, Harden might not work out, but this might unleash Tyrese Maxey if we can get some type of value in return. But that's not for us to discuss right now. Sticking with positives here, I think for the Celtics, like you said, they're still feeling it out as to, what that's going to look like. I want to start in the last 3 minutes of the second half, and then we can kind of roll this into the
second half.
Of the second quarter, and then roll this into the start of the second half, when we really got to see Kristaps, Jrue Holiday, the Jays, and Derek White, the kind of presumed either best five, starting five, closing five, whatever it might end up being. That's going to be a lineup that we see a lot. What did you see in those moments? Because I know initially it felt like you said, they're still figuring it out. It was kind of chaotic, but you could see the opportunity. It didn't quite land every time, but you could see a lot of the opportunities that were being created on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, well, I like that you said both sides of the ball, because that's where I was going to go on the defensive end. Derek White and Jrue Holiday, like when the game is going so back and forth, their ability to anticipate where people are, when we get into a track meet with another team, their ability to anticipate and cut off ball handlers, they forced, I think, 2 or 3 turnovers just in transition, just knowing where, like anticipating where somebody was going to go, sliding in front of them, knocking the ball away. I think D White did it one time and Holiday did it a couple times. But that's what kind of stood out to me, is the defensive versatility and the ability for the Celtics to go small and go athletic, right? With Derek White, Jrue Holiday being so athletic at the guard position, obviously JB and JT. And then when you have Porzingis or you have Horford there, we're going to be really athletic. I am going to miss Rob in those lineups, but that's for the Trailblazers fans to enjoy this year. With Jason Tatum, though, man, one thing I wanted to point out, the 10 rebounds in 26 minutes for Tatum. I think you and I, bro, we need to, and everybody else that's watching out there, hammer the first 5-6 games of the year, hammer the Jason Tatum over on rebounds. I think Tatum's going to be averaging 10 to 12 rebounds this year.
That's one of my predictions for the year. Is he will be a double double guy this year. I think he's going to have to be honest.
Definitely, I agree. So I mean, that's a way that you and I can make some money early on in this year. take Jason Tatum over in game to game over on rebounds. I think they're probably going to set it at like 8.5. So I think we could, just bet that over the first couple games. But what did you see, man? I loved what I saw out of those guys. It was sloppy. It was chaotic, as you said, but there's a lot of promise.
I mean, like, you talked about from the defensive perspective, and Missoula talked a lot about this on the JJ Redick podcast, which JJ Redick loved promoting during this game. If you watch the ESPN broadcast, he had a nice little day.
I started there, and then I was like, you know what? This is Mike's last season. I'm going to listen to Mike.
Did you have? I don't have access to a cable login, so I have to watch on YouTube TV and NBA League Pass, but League Pass won't show it if it's on ESPN. So
Gotcha.
I had to stick with the ESPN.
So here's the thing: somebody that's watching right now, DM at Green Envy Pod or at Wilbon13 with some credentials for Will to watch on cable.
Holla at your boy with that. But no, Missoula talked about being a point of emphasis is getting more easy buckets, right? And I think you really saw it start to click on that little run they made before this group that we're specifically talking about left the game, and Jaylen Brown got really 3 easy run out buckets, got 2 layups, and then that 3-pointer from the wing before that whole group came out. I think that portion right there was actually, that was kind of, okay, let's take this and build on it. That's going to be where we want this unit to go. And that's going to be a really important story, I think, for them to build up that momentum. Now, will we see that tomorrow night or tonight, depending on when you're listening to this in New York? My guess is those top 6 guys probably don't play and won't really factor in.
Tomorrow's a Jordan Walsh game. Everyone tune in for Jordan Walsh tomorrow night.
Turn in for Jordan Walsh. And then I think the other guy we got to talk about, of course, MVP. Early MVP chance for our guy Payton Pritchard. And let's talk a little with this. Let's talk about some of those bench players in this as well. But of course, Payton Pritchard, was the standout, signs the contract, comes out tonight, has 26 points, goes 6 of 11. And he was so good his rookie year until that knee injury. And then since then, it's kind of been up and down with inconsistency in play minutes. But when he is confident, he's such a wild card for this team, whether it be with his pesky defense, which can be overlooked because he just has size limitations, but he's going to get up in your grill. He's a pesky defender. And then with his creation on ball, with his 3-point shooting, being able to play on and off the ball, that's going to be something the Celtics can really utilize. And I think, after you're hearing all these great things about his training camp, which, by the way, it's dawning on me how hilarious it is that we build up NBA training camp. It's 4 days long. Like an NFL training camp is like basically 3 weeks to a month. It's literally less than a week for NBA training camps. But apparently Payton Pritchard had a really great one, and it certainly showed here in this first preseason game.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is something that has always frustrated me about the Payton Pritchard experience in Boston is when he burst onto the scene, his first whatever amount of games it was. I think Smart was injured early on in Pritchard's rookie year, and Pritchard ended up hurting his knee. But you remember like these games where Pritchard would come into the game, and you and I were texting, people were talking on Twitter like, oh, like Marcus Smart better watch out.
White saviors here.
Right, like Payton Pritchard was just unbelievable. That game in Sacramento when he had the big offensive rebound, he had like a nose for the ball that we hadn't really seen out of the guard position to that extent since like a Delonte West, right? He had a lot of those like Delonte like qualities where he would just like end up with an offensive rebound where he didn't expect it. He'd always like,
nose for the ball is kind of like the term that I might apply for a guy like Payton Pritchard. He just finds his way in the mix. Remember, was it his rookie year? He had a buzzer beater in Miami where he like snuck in for an offensive rebound. Might have been his second year, but one of those first 2 years, and he just finds himself in situations that he can make a play.
Yeah, and then when you think about the bag that he has, what he was doing off the pick and roll tonight, in isolation tonight, those step back threes that he was hitting, there's going to be so much opportunity for him on the offensive side of the ball because we have so much talent. With the second unit that they decided to run out there with Pritchard, they came in with the Cornette, Hauser, Pritchard, Jrue Holiday, and Jaylen Brown. That was like the second unit. And then Jaylen got replaced by JT around that 3-minute mark, which is what I'm probably expecting to happen there. Cornette will probably get some of those minutes, but I'm wondering how they stagger the Porzingis and Horford in that too. But Pritchard's going to have so many opportunities with Hauser spacing the floor off of movement, the gravity of Jason Tatum in a pick and roll with the Luke Cornette, and then Pritchard can just spot up and do his thing. And also he loves to push a ball in transition. And you saw tonight that seemed to be a real big point of emphasis. It was also a big point of emphasis in last preseason when we were getting so excited about Malcolm Brogdon. But that seemed to be the emphasis tonight, is that, we wanted to get out in transition, and Pritchard's going to thrive in an open court, when the game feels more like pickup than it does an organized game of basketball. That organized chaos, I think he's going to thrive within. And the contract that we got him in, man, like you have to wonder which side is getting the good deal here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because for the Celtics, maybe we paid too much for Payton Pritchard because he hasn't really proven anything yet. And for Payton Pritchard, it's like, am I way better than this contract? But I might as well take it, because I don't know, because you can get out of this league very quickly. So who knows? But I'm happy for the kid. He had a great game tonight, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of him hopefully tomorrow night.
Yeah, on that Payton Pritchard 4-year, $30 million extension, I think you laid out some of the main points to it, but I really think this could be, a really win-win type deal, because like you said, there's not necessarily enough proof to say, oh yeah, this guy's definitely getting an extension. But at the same time, that's definitely a contract that Payton Pritchard could outplay, and obviously don't want to, sour the great vibes of Payton Pritchard. From a Celtics perspective, Brad always talks about having roster flexibility. Now that they're committed to being the second tax apron team, you're not going to be able to compile salaries together to go make moves. So even though they have 1,700 second round picks and still a few first round picks left, if you're going to go try and get something, you need a little bit more salary. And so once you get through those top couple of guys, from the Derek White, Jrue Holiday, the Jays, Kristaps, Porzingis, you got Al at 10, and then it's a steep drop. And so then starting next offseason, Payton Pritchard's going to be up around that $7.5, $8 million mark. So you're going to have, if you need to make some moves, you'll have some more roster flexibility. So at the end of the day, I think that's a really great deal for the Celtics and for Payton Pritchard. Greg, if you're listening here on the audio, before we send this over to the second half of the podcast with Amina Smith, real quick, give me one massive overreaction to the first preseason Celtics game.
Kristaps Porzingis is going to be thought of as the Celtics' second best player by the end of this year.
The spice, El Caliente. I like it. I like it.
How about you?
That's what we're here for. Payton Pritchard's 6th Man of the Year campaign. It's already starting. I nailed Malcolm Brogdon last year after the preseason game. That did.
I wonder what the odds are. Like, there's no way that's going to happen. Like, there's no way. I wonder what the odds are for Payton Pritchard 6th Man of the Year.
Do they have write-ins that you can do when you're trying to create odds so that you can go ahead and place your bet like a write-in presidential candidate? Maybe we can.
You can. I think you can. We'd have
to. Not on our shitty website, but if you go to FanDuel, or if you go to DraftKings, you might be able to do it. All right. So for those of you that are listening here on the audio format, coming up, we have Amina Smith joining us once again. She is the homie of homies. We have an amazing conversation with her that spans across several topics. And for those of you that are listening here on YouTube, we appreciate it. Make sure you click that subscribe button. If you want to hear the Amina Smith part of the podcast, scroll on up to YouTube at the top of the YouTube page. It should be there. If not, go click us. Make sure you're rocking with us. Spotify, Apple, wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. But coming up, we got myself, we got Greg, and we got the curator of vibes, Amina Smith.
Peace, everybody.